become powerful and unrecognizable in 1 week. That line hits people in a certain way. It wakes something up. It sounds sharp, dangerous almost. It makes people think of presence, command, status, a stronger jaw, a colder voice, a room that goes quiet when you walk in. It makes people think of money, influence, discipline that looks impressive from the outside. But Stoicism does something almost brutal to that fantasy. It steps closer, looks you right in the eye, and asks a question most people spend years avoiding. What kind of power do you really have if one opinion can shake you, one rejection can drain you, one delay can ruin your mood, one insult can own your whole day, one silence can make you doubt your worth? That is where this begins. Because the Stoic idea of power is not loud. It does not need theater. It does not need an audience. It does not need to announce itself every few minutes. Real power, in the Stoic sense, is not the ability to dominate other people. It is the ability to remain undominated inside yourself. It is the ability to stay steady when life tries to pull you in 10 different directions at once. It is the ability to feel anger without becoming anger, to feel fear without becoming fear, to feel pain without handing your whole mind over to pain. It is the ability to stay in possession of your own soul. And that is why, if you actually follow this path for 1 week, people may say you seem different. They may say you changed. They may say you feel harder to read, harder to move, harder to influence. But what they are really noticing is not that you became fake. It is that you became less available to chaos, less available to manipulation, less available to your own old patterns, less available to every impulse that used to drag you around by the throat. Marcus Aurelius knew what external power looked like. He had rank, responsibility, authority, all the things the world likes to bow to. And still he wrote to himself like a man trying to win a quieter battle. The battle not to be ruled by ego, not to be ruled by irritation, not to be ruled by vanity, fear, laziness, resentment, or the need to be admired. Seneca knew luxury, politics, status, influence, and yet he kept returning to the same hard truth. If your peace depends on what can be taken away, then your peace is already weak. Epictetus, who began life with almost nothing in worldly terms, said something even more radical. Your body may be constrained, your circumstances may be harsh, your life may not be fair, but your judgment, your will, your inner posture, that belongs to you unless you surrender it. That is the doorway. So forget the modern version of transformation that is all image and no center. Forget the little performance of becoming that person, while the old confusion still runs the show behind the scenes. We are not talking about becoming colder. We are not talking about becoming cruel. We are not talking about becoming one more damaged person who mistakes numbness for strength. Stoicism is not emotional death. It is emotional order. It is not the refusal to feel. It is the refusal to be ruled by every feeling that passes through. And maybe that is why so many people remain weak for so long. Not because they lack ability, not because they are broken beyond repair, but because they never learned to separate sensation from command. They feel something and they obey it. They feel tired and they stop. They feel insecure and they shrink. They feel ignored and they chase. They feel offended and they explode. They feel temptation and they surrender. They feel discomfort and they call it a sign to retreat. A life like that may look normal from the outside, but inside, it is a form of bondage. What would happen if, for 1 week, you stopped living like that? What would happen if you stopped treating every passing thought like a prophecy? What would happen if you stopped feeding every emotion with a story? What would happen if you stopped negotiating your values every time comfort made a better offer? What would happen if, for 1 week, you began acting like your mind was sacred ground and not a public square where every opinion, every trend, every fear, every craving gets to wander in and leave its footprints behind? That is where someone becomes unrecognizable, not because their face changes, not because they suddenly become someone else, but because the leaks begin to close. The wasted energy, the endless explaining, the hunger for approval, the emotional oversharing, the compulsive reactions, the need to prove, the need to be seen, the need to be chosen, the need to be understood by everyone. When those leaks begin to close, presence returns, attention returns, weight returns, dignity returns, and when dignity returns, people notice. They may not know how to name it, but they feel it. There is a version of you the world has gotten used to, the version that answers too quickly, the version that gets pulled into things that do not matter, the version that says yes out of guilt, the version that apologizes for taking up space, the version that overthinks a message, a glance, a delay, a criticism. The version that starts strong and then disappears into distraction. The version that knows exactly what matters but keeps bowing to what is easy. That version may be familiar, but familiar does not mean true. Familiar does not mean final. Familiar does not mean worthy of being kept. Stoicism asks for something cleaner. It asks you to stop building your life around what is unstable, around applause, around image, around external outcomes you do not fully control, around moods that change like weather, around the fantasy that peace will come after the world finally behaves the way you want it to. The Stoic knows better. The world is not here to obey your preferences. People will misunderstand you. Plans will fail. Bodies will grow tired. Friends will disappoint. Doors will close. Time will move faster than you want. Pain will come without asking permission. The question is not whether these things happen. The question is what kind of person you become when they do. That is why real transformation starts with a sentence, so simple most people ignore its force. Some things are up to you, and some things are not. It sounds almost too basic, but that line can split a life in two. Your reputation is not fully up to you. Other people's opinions are not up to you. The past is not up to you. The timing of everything is not up to you. Whether someone loves you the way you hoped is not up to you. Whether they stay, whether they understand, whether they give you credit, whether they regret losing you, whether life arrives wrapped in fairness and logic, none of that sits cleanly inside your control. But your choices do. Your conduct does. Your restraint does. Your focus does. Your standards do. Your response does. Your next step does. The weak spend their strength fighting reality. The strong gather their strength and ask, quietly, now what is mine to do? That question changes everything. Because it cuts through drama. It cuts through self-pity. It cuts through fantasy. It cuts through the little egoic addiction to being the tragic center of every difficulty. Suddenly you are not asking, why is this happening to me? You are asking, what does virtue require of me here? You are not asking, how do I make the world stop hurting my feelings? You are asking, how do I remain upright inside this moment? You are not asking, how do I control the outcome? You are asking, how do I master my participation? That is power, and it begins in silence before it ever appears in results. So when this week begins, do not begin by trying to impress anyone. Begin by taking your mind back. Wake up and do not hand your attention straight to the world. Do not reach for noise before you reach for yourself. Let the morning belong to your character before it belongs to the crowd. Sit for a moment with your own thoughts before the messages, before the scrolling, before comparison enters through the screen and starts renting rooms inside your head. Remind yourself that the day will contain friction. There will be delay. There will be inconvenience. There may be disrespect. There may be fatigue. There may be some small humiliation, some interruption, some temptation to abandon your standard. Good. Let that be expected. Let that be part of the training. Say to yourself, this day will test me, but it will not own me. That is how the Stoic begins. Not with fantasy, with readiness, not with hype, with orientation, not with I hope today is easy, with even if it is not, I will remain myself. And already, in that quiet shift, something in you starts to stand taller. Not louder, taller, because most people wake up and immediately become servants. Servants to urgency. Servants to incoming information. Servants to their habits. Servants to their mood. Servants to whatever emotion happened to be waiting for them in the dark. But the person who pauses and gathers the self before entering the day is doing something rare. He is establishing government. He is making it known, at least to his own soul, that this inner territory is not abandoned land. That matters more than people think. Because once your inner world feels ownerless, everything enters and rules. Every headline, every temptation, every memory, every insecurity, every little signal from somebody else. The Stoic does not try to erase the world. He refuses to let the world become king inside him. And from there, another lesson rises. Speak less. Not because silence looks mysterious. Not because detachment is fashionable. But because much of what people call expression is really just leakage. They talk to relieve tension. They explain to control perception. They overshare to avoid sitting alone with their own uncertainty. They answer every insult because they are terrified of not correcting the record. They defend themselves to people who already decided not to understand. They keep handing their dignity to conversations that were never capable of carrying it well. A powerful person does not need to answer everything. He does not need to chase every misunderstanding. He does not need to win every narrative battle. He does not need to explain his depth to shallow rooms. He knows that truth is often slow. Character is often slow. Reality is often slow. But what is real does not need to scream. Epictetus once pointed toward this with that hard simplicity he had. If someone speaks ill of you, and it is true, correct yourself. If it is false, let the lie belong to the one who made it. There is enormous freedom in that, and enormous pain too at first. Because ego hates unresolved misperception. Ego wants immediate repair, immediate justice, immediate validation. But wisdom knows something ego hates to admit. Not everyone gets access to the truth of you. Some people will leave with the wrong version. Let them go. The moment you stop trying to be properly understood by every passing person, a strange kind of strength begins to grow. You become less theatrical, less restless, less likely to betray yourself just to maintain an image. Your energy stops scattering in all directions. It begins to collect, and collected energy feels like presence. That is what people sense when they say someone changed. They are sensing a person who is no longer leaking himself into every corner of the day, and that becomes even more visible in the body. Stoicism was never an excuse for softness. The Stoics understood that the body, while not the highest thing, is still a field of discipline. If you obey every craving, every appetite, every impulse toward comfort, why would you imagine yourself capable of standing firm when life becomes truly difficult? If you cannot rise when the bed is warm, if you cannot stop when desire is loud, if you cannot continue when motivation disappears, then it is not life that owns you. It is impulse. So yes, there is a physical side to becoming powerful. Not for appearance first, though appearance may shift. For command. For self-respect. For the deep inner message repeated through action. I do not bow that easily anymore. You move your body when you do not feel like it. You clean what you have been tolerating in disorder. You eat with more awareness. You let discomfort exist without treating it like an emergency. You sit upright. You walk with intention. You stop worshiping convenience. None of that is glamorous. But glamour is cheap. Authority is not. And then comes the next hard truth. Much of what people call weakness is not only pain. It is indulgence with pain. It is the habit of feeding it, decorating it, turning it into identity. There is pain that comes honestly from life. And then there is pain that is prolonged by story, by repetition, by self-absorption, by the secret comfort of staying fragile, because fragility excuses responsibility. Stoicism does not mock suffering. It does not deny grief. It does not tell you not to feel the weight of being human. But it does ask a piercing question. Are you carrying this, or are you rehearsing it? That question can be life-changing. Because some people do not need more insight. They need less attachment to their own performance of woundedness. They need to stop introducing themselves to the day through their injuries. They need to stop treating every discomfort like a sacred identity. They need to stop protecting the very habits that keep them small. If you can see that clearly, even for a moment, then the week has already begun to work on you. The next stage is quieter, harder, and far more important than any burst of motivation. It is where you begin to see that power is not built in dramatic moments. It is built in ordinary ones, in the gray parts of the day, in the stretch of time when nobody is clapping, nobody is watching, and nothing feels cinematic. This is where almost everyone falls back into being who they were, because inspiration is easy to love. Repetition is not. A speech can lift you for a moment. A principle can carry you for life, but only if you live it when the day feels plain. This is where Stoicism separates itself from performance. The weak change when the energy is high. The strong change in the middle of the average afternoon. In the moment when the room is messy and you could ignore it again, but you do not. In the moment when you want to indulge the old habit, but you decide not to. In the moment when you could keep scrolling, keep postponing, keep comforting yourself with delay, and instead you return to the thing that matters. In the moment when your mind says it does not matter, and you answer, it matters because I am the one doing it. That kind of repetition builds something rare, self-trust. And self-trust is one of the purest forms of power a person can have. Because when you do what you say you will do, when you hold your word even in small private moments, when you stop disappointing yourself in tiny invisible ways, your whole inner world begins to change. Your posture changes. Your attention sharpens. Your decision-making gets cleaner. Your emotional dependence weakens. Why? Because you are no longer trying to borrow worth from external things. You are generating it through alignment. Your word means something to you now. And once that happens, the whole structure of your life begins to reorganize itself around something stronger than mood. Most people do not realize how much of their anxiety comes from self-betrayal. Not all of it, of course. Life is complicated. Pain is real. But a great deal of internal noise comes from the quiet knowledge that you keep abandoning your own standard. You keep promising and then drifting. You keep knowing and not doing. You keep asking for change while protecting the exact habits that prevent it. That creates friction inside the soul. You may call it stress, confusion, lack of confidence, lack of motivation. But often underneath it is something simpler and more painful. I do not fully trust myself. The Stoic path repairs that slowly. Not with self-esteem slogans. With conduct. Not by telling yourself you are powerful. By becoming the kind of person whose actions have gravity. Seneca understood this deeply. He knew that no amount of philosophy matters if it never enters habit. To speak beautifully about virtue, and then panic over every little insult is not wisdom. To quote strength, and then collapse under appetite is not wisdom. To admire discipline, and never practice, it is not wisdom. Philosophy, in the Stoic sense, was medicine for life. It was meant to be used, touched, sweated through, carried into the marketplace, the home, the conflict, the grief, the waiting room, the sleepless night, the awkward conversation, the temptation, the disappointment, the ordinary Tuesday when the soul wants to drift. And that is where you start to become unrecognizable in the most meaningful way. Not by inventing a stronger image, by outgrowing the old patterns that used to keep you available to chaos. One of those patterns is your relationship to discomfort. Most people have been trained, almost since childhood, to interpret discomfort as danger. If something feels awkward, heavy, uncertain, demanding, or emotionally inconvenient, they assume they should back away from it, medicate it, distract from it, or explain why now is not the right time. But the Stoic learns a harsher and more liberating lesson. Discomfort is not a verdict. It is often just the sensation of growth, restraint, honesty, discipline, or reality making contact with your preferences. You feel discomfort when you tell the truth after a season of pretending. You feel discomfort when you hold your boundaries after years of people-pleasing. You feel discomfort when you train the body instead of indulging it. You feel discomfort when you stop reaching for your phone every time silence begins to reveal something inside you. You feel discomfort when you choose dignity over quick relief. Good. Let it be uncomfortable. You are not here to build a life that protects you from every hard feeling. You are here to become the kind of person who can carry hard feelings without becoming smaller. That is why 1 week can matter so much. Not because a week makes you finished. It does not. But a week can break enchantment. A week can prove to you that you do not have to obey every urge. A week can expose how many of your old reactions were not necessities but habits. A week can show you that your mind is trainable, your body is trainable, your attention is trainable, your standards are recoverable. Once you see that, it gets much harder to return to the illusion that you are helpless. Another place where power shows up is in your relationship to other people. This is delicate because people hear the language of self-mastery and sometimes twist it into emotional isolation. They imagine that becoming strong means becoming distant, untouchable, severe, incapable of tenderness. That is not Stoicism. That is injury wearing formal clothes. The Stoic does not aim to feel less. He aims to feel without servitude. He aims to care without collapsing. He aims to love without begging. He aims to serve without erasing himself. He aims to remain kind without becoming weak in the presence of disorder. This matters because many people are not destroyed by life alone. They are drained by their inability to hold clear boundaries with others. They keep trying to save those who do not want to be saved. They keep staying where they are tolerated but not valued. They keep offering loyalty to people who only love convenience. They keep shrinking so a relationship can continue. They keep performing understanding while their spirit quietly starves. And then they wonder why they feel hollow. The Stoic response is not bitterness. It is discernment. You do not have to hate people to stop handing them access to your peace. You do not have to become cruel to become less available for disrespect. You do not have to stop loving to stop chasing. This is a hard lesson, maybe one of the hardest. Because many people were taught that love means endurance without limit. That loyalty means staying beyond reason. That compassion means permanent self-neglect. But Stoicism sees the danger there. If you give without wisdom, you become resentful. If you stay without truth, you become divided. If you keep trying to earn what should be freely reciprocated, you become dependent on scraps. There is real power in no longer begging for mutuality. There is real power in saying, with calm and not with rage, this is no longer worthy of my participation. There is real power in leaving the table where your dignity keeps getting priced below appetite, confusion, or convenience. And when you do that, people who knew the old version of you may say you have changed. They may say you are colder now, harder now, less easy now. What they often mean is this: you are no longer cooperating with patterns that once benefited them. Let them say it. Transformation always offends the arrangements that were built around your former weakness. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that other people act from what they think is good, even when they are mistaken. That does not mean you excuse everything. It means you stop taking every flaw personally. You stop acting shocked that untrained people behave in untrained ways. You stop expecting wisdom from vanity, consistency from chaos, restraint from impulsiveness, depth from the superficial, gratitude from the entitled. You deal with reality as it is, and that alone can save enormous amounts of energy. Because part of power is not demanding from life what life never promised, not demanding fairness from every encounter, not demanding maturity from everyone you meet, not demanding that your path be smooth just because your intentions are good. This is where many people become secretly exhausted. They are not just tired from work or pressure. They are tired from arguing with the nature of reality, tired from expecting life to remove all friction, tired from being offended every time the world proves itself worldly. The Stoic says, enough. See clearly. Expect difficulty. Expect imperfection. Expect misunderstanding. Then meet these things with character instead of surprise. That shift alone can make a person look transformed. Suddenly the little things do not shake you the way they used to. The line is long. Fine. The message did not come. Fine. The plan changed. Fine. Someone was rude. Fine. Something took longer than you wanted. Fine. Not because you have become passive, but because you have stopped treating inconvenience like an assault on your identity. There is so much power in that. And then there is the mind itself, with all its habits of exaggeration. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. That line remains devastating because it is still true. A silence becomes a betrayal in the theater of the mind. A delay becomes disaster. One mistake becomes proof of unworthiness. One setback becomes a prophecy of failure. We take a fact and wrap it in story until it becomes unbearable. And then we say life is crushing us, when in many cases it is our interpretation that has multiplied the weight. So part of this week is learning to strip things back down to their real size. Not every problem is a catastrophe. Not every emotion is a message from destiny. Not every fear is a warning. Not every thought deserves a throne. Sometimes you are not ruined. You are simply uncomfortable. Sometimes you are not failing. You are simply in process. Sometimes you are not abandoned. You are simply being forced to stand on your own legs for once. Sometimes you are not broken. You are just being asked to grow in a place you would rather remain a child. That clarity matters, because when you can name things accurately, you stop feeding illusions. And when illusions lose food, they shrink. Marcus Aurelius used to cut through false glamour by describing things plainly. Pleasure, status, luxury, insult, praise, flesh, bone, time, dust, all of it stripped of theatrical packaging. Why? Because the mind gets captured by appearances. It inflates things, worships things, fears things. By naming them plainly, he returned them to scale. He took away their magic. That is a deeply Stoic act. It is the act of reclaiming sovereignty from the stories your mind wants to tell. And this matters in modern life more than ever, because you are living in an environment designed to agitate you, designed to scatter you, designed to make you compare, react, consume, envy, panic, overshare, perform, designed to keep your nervous system open and your attention for sale. If you do not build inner discipline now, you do not stay neutral. You become available to manipulation, available to emotional exhaustion, available to every manufactured urgency the world throws at you. That is why becoming powerful and unrecognizable in a Stoic way is not a luxury. It is a form of survival with dignity. You stop living as a product of whatever entered your mind last. You stop letting your attention be auctioned off all day. You stop mistaking stimulation for purpose. You stop handing your inner weather over to devices, opinions, and trends. And once that begins, you do not just feel stronger. You become more real. That is what frightens shallow environments. Reality. A person who no longer needs to perform is difficult to control. A person who no longer needs approval is difficult to bait. A person who can tolerate silence is difficult to manipulate. A person who can endure discomfort is difficult to weaken. A person who can delay gratification is difficult to buy. A person who can stand alone without collapsing is difficult to enslave. That is why the path matters. Not for aesthetics, for freedom. By now the change is starting to settle deeper. Not as a mood, as a structure. And that is important because moods are weather, and weather cannot be your foundation. Anyone can feel strong for a moment. Anyone can sound resolved when the music is right, when the pain is fresh, when the speech is fiery, when the image of a better self still glows in the imagination. But what happens after that? What happens when the mood drops? What happens when the body feels heavy, when the day is flat, when the old cravings come back dressed as comfort, when loneliness whispers, when boredom scratches at the door, when the world gives you no applause and no sign that your effort is being noticed? That is the real test, and Stoicism never lies to you about that. It tells you from the beginning that the real work is not in the dramatic vow. It is in the return to your principle, the return to your discipline, the return to your reason, the return to the standard you chose when you were clear. That return is everything. You will need it when anger shows up, because anger has a seductive quality. It makes people feel powerful for a second. It gives them heat, language, force. It makes them feel less afraid, less small, less exposed. But most anger is weakness disguised as authority. It is reactivity pretending to be strength. It is the ego trying to restore itself through noise. The Stoic does not deny anger's arrival. He denies anger the throne. He watches it come in like weather over a field and says, "You may pass through, but you do not get to rule here." Imagine the difference that makes in a life. Someone provokes you, and instead of becoming their puppet, you remain measured. Someone misunderstands you, and instead of exploding, you choose whether response is even necessary. Something unfair happens, and instead of turning pain into performance, you meet the moment with order. That is not weakness. That is mastery. And mastery has a presence to it that no shouting can imitate. The same is true of fear. Fear does not always look like panic. Sometimes it looks like constant delay. Sometimes it looks like endless preparation. Sometimes it looks like perfectionism. Sometimes it looks like pretending not to care. Sometimes it looks like staying in what is familiar, even when familiar is slowly killing your spirit. Fear can be sophisticated. It can learn polished language. It can call itself caution, realism, sensitivity, timing, overthinking, standards. But underneath many of these masks is the same ancient trembling. If I move, I might lose something. The Stoic answer to fear is not recklessness. It is perspective. What exactly are you afraid of losing? Image? Comfort? Control? Approval? The illusion that you can avoid pain by avoiding courage? Once you see fear clearly, it often becomes smaller. Not because the stakes are unreal, but because fear survives best in vagueness. It thrives in fog. Name it, and it starts losing shape. Seneca practiced imagining loss not to darken life, but to free life from constant anxiety. He understood that part of what torments people is their refusal to admit that loss is always possible. Because they refuse to admit it, they remain secretly terrified all the time. They clutch. They obsess. They monitor. They try to control what cannot be controlled. And in doing so, they turn life into one long act of tension. But if you face the possibility with honesty, something strange happens. You become calmer. You realize that while you cannot guarantee outcomes, you can still guarantee your character. You can still choose your conduct. You can still refuse to become dishonorable in your fear. That is a kind of invincibility the world does not talk about enough. Not the invincibility of never being touched. The invincibility of never being reduced. That matters in work too. So many people are at the mercy of results. A good day makes them arrogant. A bad day makes them despairing. Praise inflates them. Criticism punctures them. Progress excites them. Delay destroys them. Their emotional life is chained to outcomes, and outcomes are never fully theirs. The Stoic offers a better arrangement. He says, give yourself to the work, not to the fantasy of controlling every result. Be devoted to excellence in effort, clarity in thought, honesty in action, and let the external fruit arrive when it arrives, if it arrives. That is not laziness. It is purified ambition. Ambition without servitude. Because there is a difference between caring deeply and clinging desperately. When you cling, you suffer before suffering arrives. You measure your worth through every response from the world. You become unstable. But when you care with discipline, you can pour yourself into the task and remain inwardly free. You work harder, not softer. But you do not worship the outcome as your judge. Imagine what that does to a person. They become more focused because they are less emotionally noisy. They become more consistent because they are less addicted to excitement. They become more trustworthy because their effort does not depend on applause. They become more dangerous in the best sense because they are no longer easy to discourage. And here again the world may call them different. Harder to read, harder to sway, harder to rattle. Yes, good. That is what happens when a person stops outsourcing his center. There is also a moral dimension to all this that cannot be ignored. Stoicism is not self-control for vanity's sake. It is not discipline for aesthetics alone. It is about becoming a person fit to live in truth. A person governed not by appetite, but by principle. A person whose life is arranged around justice, courage, wisdom, and temperance. These old words still matter. In fact, they may matter more now than ever. Because the modern world gives people endless tools and very little inner government. It teaches them how to optimize almost everything except the soul. So ask yourself, in the middle of this transformation, am I becoming merely more efficient, or am I becoming more noble? Am I building control so I can impress, dominate, and protect my ego, or am I building control so I can remain fair, steady, useful, and honorable under pressure? The Stoics cared about this distinction deeply. A calm villain is still a villain. A disciplined narcissist is still a narcissist. Strength without virtue becomes another form of danger. That is why Stoic power must always be tied to character. Otherwise, it is just refined selfishness. The truly powerful person is not merely hard to offend. He is also hard to corrupt. He cannot be bought by praise. He cannot be ruled by pleasure. He cannot be steered by envy. He cannot be turned petty by success or cruel by disappointment. He cannot be made small by another person's ignorance. He remains himself. That is the standard, and it becomes especially visible in speech. Listen closely to a person who is inwardly scattered. Their speech often reveals it. They overstate. They rush. They talk to fill silence. They interrupt themselves. They use language like a net, trying to catch control, trying to catch approval, trying to catch safety. But a person who has begun to govern himself speaks differently. Not necessarily slowly, not artificially, but with weight, with intention. He does not say everything he thinks. He does not leak every emotion into the room. He does not promise lightly. He does not dramatize to keep attention. He understands that words shape the one who speaks them. That is why part of this week must involve your mouth. Speak less impulsively. Complain less. Explain less. Boast less. Defend yourself less. Observe more. Mean what you say. Keep your words aligned with your values. You will be amazed how much stronger you feel when your language is no longer a place where your confusion runs wild. Then there is the matter of solitude. Many people are terrified of it, not because solitude itself is unbearable, but because without noise they start hearing the truths they have been outrunning. They hear the grief, the envy, the fear, the wasted time, the self-betrayal, the lack of direction, the dependence on distraction, and so they stay busy, always stimulated, always talking, scrolling, moving, consuming, anything but stillness. Because stillness reveals. But the Stoic makes peace with that revelation. He goes inward not to worship himself, but to examine himself. To ask, what in me is weak? What in me is dishonest? What in me is ruled by appetite, ego, fear, comfort, resentment? Where am I pretending? Where am I hiding? Where am I still blaming life for choices that are mine? This is not self-hatred. It is self-governance. The person who will not examine himself remains vulnerable to every inner saboteur he refuses to name. And once you begin that examination honestly, you discover something almost shocking. Many of the chains you thought were iron were habits. Many of the prisons you thought were destiny were patterns. Many of the weaknesses you thought defined you were simply repeated permissions. You allowed yourself to drift, allowed yourself to react, allowed yourself to indulge, allowed yourself to avoid, allowed yourself to keep saying, "This is just how I am," long after the evidence suggested otherwise. That discovery can be painful, but it is also the beginning of liberation. Because if a thing was learned, it can be unlearned. If a pattern was practiced, another can be practiced. If weakness was fed, strength can be fed. If chaos was normalized, order can be restored. And that is where 1 week becomes symbolic. It becomes the first honest agreement between you and yourself. An agreement that says, I will no longer treat my life like an accident. I will no longer let every passing desire negotiate my standards downward. I will no longer call myself powerless while handing power away in every small moment. I will no longer wait for a future version of me to rescue the one who keeps refusing the training. This is where the old self starts losing oxygen. The old self that needed immediate comfort. The old self that dramatized every setback. The old self that chased where it was not respected. The old self that kept seeking permission to become serious. The old self that wanted the rewards of discipline without the friction of discipline. The old self that confused being emotional with being deep. The old self that confused being desired with being valuable. The old self that confused appearing strong with actually standing firm. Let that self fade, not with hatred, with maturity, because a great deal of growth is simply the quiet refusal to keep entertaining younger versions of your own confusion. And one more thing must be said here, because it matters. You are not doing this to become unreachable. You are doing this to become rooted. There is a difference. Some people here be stronger and become defensive. They harden into posture. They build walls instead of structure. They become emotionally stingy, spiritually rigid, relationally dry. That is not the Stoic path. The Stoic path is strength with humanity, firmness with warmth, clarity with compassion, boundaries with decency, restraint with heart. The tree with deep roots is not dead. It is alive enough to withstand the storm. That is the aim, not to become less human, to become less easily hijacked. And when that happens, your kindness changes too. It becomes cleaner. You give without losing yourself. You listen without drowning. You serve without performing martyrdom. You care without treating another person's disorder as your permanent assignment. That kind of love is far stronger than needy attachment. It is freer, steadier, more honest. It does not beg. It does not manipulate. It does not collapse at the first sign of non-reciprocity. It stands, offers, and if necessary, lets go. That is also power. The power to love without self-erasure. The power to walk away without bitterness. The power to remain good without becoming gullible. The power to remain open without becoming unguarded everywhere. By the time a person reaches this point, the transformation no longer looks like a trend or a challenge. It looks like a return to dignity, a return to seriousness, a return to clear sight, a return to a life that is no longer organized around avoiding discomfort at all costs. And when a person returns to that, yes, the world often finds him unrecognizable. At the end of this journey, what matters most is not that you feel intense. It is that you feel ordered. Not that you feel invincible. It is that you are no longer constantly surrendering. Not that you have eliminated pain. It is that pain no longer has automatic access to your steering wheel. This is the final distinction, and it is everything. Stoicism does not promise a painless life. It promises the possibility of a life in which pain does not make every decision for you. That is real power, and it grows in the night as much as in the day. Because eventually every serious person must sit with himself when the noise fades. No audience, no rush, no performance, just the quiet question, how did I live today? Not how did I look? Not how was I perceived? Not whether I won the room, or attracted attention, or said all the right things. How did I live? Was I ruled by impulse, or did I govern it? Did I act according to my values, or according to convenience? Did I speak truthfully? Did I exaggerate? Did I complain needlessly? Did I preserve dignity, where once I would have collapsed into appetite or fear? Did I return to myself when I drifted? These questions make a person strong, because they make a person honest. And honesty is one of the rarest forms of courage. Most people do not lie to others nearly as often as they lie to themselves. They tell themselves tomorrow will be different while protecting every habit that keeps tomorrow a copy of today. They tell themselves they are waiting for the right time, while fear quietly chooses for them. They tell themselves they are sensitive when they are undisciplined, misunderstood when they are unclear, unlucky when they are inconsistent, overwhelmed when they are disorganized, stuck when they are attached to comfort. Stoicism cuts through these private myths. Not to humiliate you, to free you, because the day you stop lying to yourself is the day your life becomes workable again. You may still have grief. You may still have limitations. You may still have scars, fatigue, obligations, uncertainties, and losses that no philosophy can erase. But now you have truth, and truth gives you somewhere to stand. That is why the Stoics were never obsessed with looking strong. They were obsessed with being in right relation to reality, seeing clearly, choosing well, remaining upright. If praise came, fine. If blame came, fine. If comfort came, fine. If hardship came, fine. They did not define themselves by what arrived. They defined themselves by how they met what arrived. And that is the kind of power no one can hand you, and no one can fully take away. A title can be taken. Money can be taken. Beauty fades. Influence shifts. People leave. Seasons change. Bodies weaken. Fortunes reverse. But character, if built carefully, remains a kind of quiet wealth. It remains in the room when the decorations burn off. It remains when the applause is gone. It remains when you are misunderstood, delayed, underestimated, ignored. It remains at the bedside of grief. It remains in the aftermath of failure. It remains in silence. It remains in solitude. It remains where performance cannot go. That is what you are building. So if you want to become powerful and unrecognizable in 1 week, understand what must become unrecognizable. Let your old reactivity become unrecognizable. Let your old dependence on validation become unrecognizable. Let your old willingness to betray yourself for comfort become unrecognizable. Let your old habit of narrating every difficulty as catastrophe become unrecognizable. Let your old need to explain yourself to the unwilling become unrecognizable. Let your old fragility around discomfort become unrecognizable. Let your old relationship with distraction become unrecognizable. Let your old spiritual laziness become unrecognizable. Let your old scattered attention become unrecognizable. Let the old self, the one that kept handing over the keys, become harder and harder to find. And in its place, build something quieter and stronger. Build the person who can wake without immediately becoming prey. Build the person who can be alone without unraveling. Build the person who can hear no without turning it into self-hatred. Build the person who can hear yes without turning it into vanity. Build the person who can work without needing constant emotional reward. Build the person who can be kind without becoming available to abuse. Build the person who can feel deeply without drowning in every passing inner weather. Build the person who can be disappointed without becoming bitter. Build the person who can be praised without becoming foolish. Build the person who can be ignored without becoming desperate. Build the person who can suffer and still remain decent. That is the person the Stoics were trying to become. Not superhuman. Not lifeless. Not severe for its own sake. Just free enough inside to remain good under pressure. That is no small thing. In fact, it may be the greatest achievement available to a human being. And you do not reach it through fantasies of perfection. You reach it through return. Through practice. Through correction. Through beginning again faster than before. This matters because you will fail somewhere in this process. Of course you will. You will react in a way you did not want to. You will waste time. You will indulge an old appetite. You will say too much, or retreat too much, or think too dramatically, or let an outside event get inside you more deeply than you intended. Fine. See it. Name it. Correct it. Move on. The weak turn mistakes into identity. The wise turn mistakes into instruction. There is power in how quickly you return. There is power in refusing to build a home inside your own setback. There is power in not making your imperfection an excuse for surrender. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself not because he had already mastered everything, but because he needed reminding. Again and again. That is one of the most beautiful things about his example. The emperor was still practicing, still pulling himself back, still correcting, still refusing to let rank deceive him into thinking he was beyond discipline. Let that humble you in the best way. No one is above the work. No one gets to graduate from self-mastery while still alive. The question is not whether you will need reminding. The question is whether you will answer the reminder with action. So tonight, or this morning, or whenever this reaches you, make the agreement cleanly. For 1 week, I will live as if my inner world matters. For 1 week, I will stop feeding every impulse. For 1 week, I will stop speaking from every emotion. For 1 week, I will stop letting distraction devour the life I claim to value. For 1 week, I will stop asking comfort to raise me. For 1 week, I will act like discipline is love, because in many ways it is. For 1 week, I will return to what is mine to govern. And maybe what surprises you most is how little noise this requires. No grand announcement. No identity performance. No need to declare to the world that you are changing. Just change. Let the proof be private before it becomes visible. Let your habits speak first. Let your restraint speak first. Let your consistency speak first. Let your silence, your composure, your clearer eyes, your steadier step, your more deliberate word, let those things speak. People will notice. Some will respect it. Some will resent it. Some will feel accused by it without you saying a word, because your order reminds them of their disorder. Do not be distracted by any of that. You are not doing this to create an effect. You're doing this to stop living beneath your nature. That is the heart of it. The Stoics believe that a human being has a function, a highest use, a way of living that is worthy of reason and dignity. Not merely surviving, not merely consuming, not merely reacting, not merely chasing pleasure and status until death interrupts the chase, but living with awareness, with virtue, with self-command, with alignment between what one knows and what one does, with the kind of seriousness that is not grim, but clear. That seriousness is beautiful, rare but beautiful. It makes a person feel substantial again. And perhaps that is what so many people are really starving for now. Not more stimulation, not more tips, not more hacks, not more aesthetic self-improvement, but substance, a center, a life that does not feel borrowed from the moods of strangers and the noise of machines, a self they can respect in the quiet. If that is what you want, then this path is for you. Not because it is easy, because it is clean. It asks a lot, but what it asks for, it asks in the service of freedom. It asks you to discipline your mind, so your mind stops tyrannizing you. It asks you to discipline your tongue, so your speech stops scattering you. It asks you to discipline your appetites, so desire stops owning you. It asks you to discipline your attention, so the world cannot buy all of you for almost nothing. It asks you to discipline your conduct so self-respect can return. And when self-respect returns, something remarkable happens. You do not need as much from the world anymore. Not because you become detached from all human warmth, but because you stop asking others to supply what only character can build. You stop asking love to replace discipline. You stop asking success to replace self-worth. You stop asking pleasure to replace peace. You stop asking admiration to replace inner authority. You stop asking busyness to replace purpose. You become simpler inside, more ordered, more still. And from the outside that may look like mystery, but from the inside it feels like relief. Finally, there is room to breathe. Finally, there is less civil war in the mind. Finally, there is less hunger in every interaction. Finally, there is less need to perform, convince, chase, prove. Finally, you can stand in your own life without constantly leaning on unstable things. That is why the ending of this journey is not dramatic. It is sober. You do not arrive with fireworks. You arrive with steadiness. You arrive with a mind less crowded. You arrive with a body less indulged. You arrive with speech less wasteful. You arrive with standards less negotiable. You arrive with a heart that can care without kneeling before every source of affection. You arrive with a deeper tolerance for reality. You arrive with more reverence for your own soul. And that may be the true meaning of becoming powerful. Not that you now control the world, but that the world has less permission to control you. Not that you have become emotionless, but that emotion no longer writes every law inside you. Not that life has become easier, but that you have become harder to break in the ways that matter. So walk into this week differently. Walk into it as someone reclaiming territory. Walk into it as someone tired of self-betrayal. Walk into it as someone who understands that dignity is built in moments too small for the crowd to notice. Walk into it as someone ready to stop worshiping comfort. Walk into it as someone who would rather be real than impressive. Walk into it as someone willing to trade noise for depth, urgency for clarity, impulse for command, performance for substance. And when the week is over, do not ask only whether others see you differently. Ask whether you can feel the difference in the way you carry your own mind. Ask whether silence feels less threatening. Ask whether discomfort feels less absolute. Ask whether your word feels heavier in your own mouth. Ask whether your reactions have slowed enough for wisdom to enter. Ask whether you are beginning to admire the person who shows up when no one else is there. That is the person worth becoming. That is the person Stoicism calls forth. And perhaps the line you carry with you is this: the one who governs himself has already become greater than the one who only knows how to conquer the world. And before you go, subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this, more Stoic wisdom, more clarity, and more strength for everyday life. And leave a comment below telling me where you're watching from. I always love seeing how far these ideas travel, and it means a lot to know which part of the world you're listening from.